So by the miracle of YouTube's recommendation system, I got this video of dirt enduro bikes. And all I could think of was that how accurate the sound is compared to GTA 5's dirt bikes. This took me back to riding on mountains using a dirt bike in GTA 5. At first it was just the dirt bike and other bikes in common. But later I started thinking of every other vehicle and how similar it sounds to the actual vehicle itself. And later I started thinking about other sounds like the pedestrians moving, the birds chirping, or you walking on the street, or you getting on a bike or off a bike, or opening the car door. And all sorts of sounds like this are pretty accurate to how they would sound in real life. I kept wondering, how is this even possible? It's such a drastic, random event generator, as in you don't really know what's going to happen, and you, the user, are in charge of what's going to happen. So you can't really pre-program these sounds. So I took this question to Reddit. I was like, how does GTA map the audio to the action in game? And I got one response that said that this has something to do with sound design. Now, I'd heard about sound design before in cinematography and also in animated movies, but I never thought of it being used in game design. So I did some research around this and I found this one talk from GDC 2014, the Game Developers Conference. And soon I started looking at other games like the RDR, which is also by Rockstar Games, and they have a video about how they made this sound design possible in the game, and I have a video linked down below for that. And also I have the talk from GDC 2014 linked down below, so description, that's where you'll find it. Here's a snippet from the talk itself.
So we support about 1,000, just over 1,000 virtual voices, and just under 100 of those are rendered physically. We don't use any manual priority system for this. It doesn't really work for our game. You might think an explosion sound is really important, but if it's the sound of the plane that you build out of exploding 3 miles away, it's probably not as important as the mountain lion that's about to eat you.
If you didn't understand anything that he was saying, then it's for good reason. It's pretty hard to understand if you haven't really come from a sound or a signal processing background. Put simply, what he's trying to say is that there are 1,000 different waves of sound that are there in game, and every 15 milliseconds this Rage audio engine takes 100 of these widest waveforms and it plays it back to you. Before the sounds are actually rendered at runtime, it goes through a series of signal processing and digital processing, like amplitude modulation, frequency modulation, and so on. Now there are a few different things when it comes to recording sounds. It's not just vehicles or it's not just walking. There are quite a few different domains that these sounds fall under, and they include ambience, collision, movement, pain, radio, score, script, speech, vehicles, weapons. And you can see from this chart that collision takes up a lot of wave memory, and this is for good reason. Collisions are probably the most random events that happen in game. You can see 1,000 different gameplays of people colliding in various different forms, and it's pretty hard to pre-program this into a computer and say that this is the collision sound that you need to play when certain thing happens. It's always a mixture of 2 or more events that lead to a collision. We have a few other things like walking, and like the birds chirping, and like ambient noise from the pedestrians and other vehicles, which are easily recorded and they can be played back at any point in time. But there's something very specific that you as a user will notice much more than all these things, and that is the sound of the vehicle that you're in. So GTA takes this up very seriously, and they have a whole process for recording the sounds of engines of different vehicles and different car models and different cars itself. So how they do this is using miniature Omni mics. These are small mics that are capable of recording very strong audios, and they fit this into the engine of a vehicle, and they take this car and they play it around in a airfield. Maybe they ride it around because it's an actual car, but yeah, they ride this car around in an airfield and they record the sound of the engine. So they read 3 different chunks of audio that they need, which they can later extrapolate into any given point in time that you're riding a car. So they read 3 chunks, which are the ideal state of an engine, the acceleration, and the deceleration. So how they do idle state is that they just leave the engine on and they record the sound like that. And for acceleration, they usually run the car in second gear and they record the sound over a span of 40 seconds. And they make this undergo a series of signal processing again so that they can get different frequencies out and they can do some EQ adjustments. And finally, you have deceleration. They run the car in the first gear and they slowly come to a halt, and this is how they record the sound for deceleration. But a car never goes in a single speed, right? It always goes from a slow state to a high state and maybe back to a slow state. But what they have recorded is a single monotonic pace of audio, which they can later on use to do some frequency modulation for different torques and different speeds of the car itself. So I guess you've heard enough from me. I guess it'd be nice if we can actually play the game and actually see these in action. Let's move this table around, let's move this setup around, and I'll see you in the next shot. So let's jump right into the game, except this time let's pay a little more closer attention to audio. So I have GTA 5 running right now. So far pretty standard stuff. We just have Franklin in his house trying to walk around, and we can see that as he walks down steps and as he increases his speed, his sound of the footstep changes. And for different textures of the ground like carpet and maybe patio furniture. So let's go out. As we go out, we see that the sound of the door is corresponding to the way he pushes it. If he pushes it slowly, then it's a different sound, and if he runs into it, it's a different sound. Right off the bat, we can see that there's a lot of ambient noise in the atmosphere, and as we walk and as we just move our mouse in a certain way, I can feel that the noise moves from my left ear to the right ear is the way that it should be. Okay, so as we go down the mountain, we can see that as we press the accelerator and release the accelerator, the sound of the vehicle changes. I think there's some kind of sound design going on here where as I press the W key, it adds a particular sound, and as I release it, it adds a different kind of sound because the vehicle is still moving. As I go and as I make cars stop behind me, I can hear the sound of the brakes in the car, and I think that's very intricate sound design. And even the tires scraping against the road versus the grass is quite different, and I think there's some kind of mapping in the 100 ambient noises that's going on here. As we get in, the car makes a different noise as we get in and as we close the door actually. I think that was a very good example of sound design. Collisions, right? They require the most attention when it comes to sound design because each collision that happens is very different. It's not something you can predict beforehand. There's a lot of random actions happening, and I think each different type of collision requires a different sound, and I think it's really hard to manage all these sounds together. I think one more example would be, using your weapons. I think that's a very good example of sound design, how different bullets react with different surfaces, different people. And let's just try it out. Okay, I guess I could hear no difference in the sound of these bullets, maybe because they've used the concept of the person playing the game, right? So it's more of how you would hear a bullet. It goes from your perspective. You don't hear the bullet striking against the surface. So I guess there's not much difference when it comes to using guns, except for different guns which have different noises. One thing I was very curious about is how there are different sounds inside a particular car, right? Like maybe you're starting off at a lower torque, lower RPM, and you slowly pick up, but the sound of the engine also changes during that time. I guess that was something that I was very interested in, seeing how they deal with that. And in the talk that I watched, they said that it has to do with different frequencies, how the car goes to a higher frequency in the engine as we go faster. I think intricacies like this, like changing the sound of the footsteps based on what structure he's walking in, I think those are very good additions to getting the user to be very involved in the game. What if we blow out all four wheels? Okay, let's try it out now. Okay, I can see the transition happen between having 3 wheels and 4 wheels. I can see that it goes from having a rubbery noise against the road to a completely metallic sound. I think that's very. And right now, as we go on the sand, there shouldn't be any metallic sound. I think these are very small intricacies that that are very hard to include in a game like this. One more thing I see is that when I'm inside the tunnel, the sound sounds like you're in a tunnel, and as I leave the tunnel, I can literally feel it being more open. I think that's about it for me, having tested out the intricacies of the audio system in GTA 5. Let's continue back to the video. It goes without saying that these are not the only audio aspects that GTA considers while making their sounds. It's much more complicated than what I've explained in this video. If you feel interested in this and you want a more detailed overview of how exactly they do it, then I have a video linked down below. It's from GDC 14, and it goes into very detail about what they exactly do behind sound design and everything that involves sound. Maybe some of you can understand it better than I did and explain it in a much better way. And if you have any thoughts or suggestions about how this video turned out, please leave them down in the comments below. If you like this video, please click the like button, it helps me out a lot. Anyways, that's been it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.